Aloha mai kako.
Aloha.
O Kaleo Perry, o Inoa, no Kamuki Maya. Aloha everybody, my name is Kaleo Perry. I'm from Kamuki. I'm part of the Hawaii delegation with my peers over here. What we just presented to you guys is Oli. It's a Hawaiian chant, and it grounds us and humbles us before entering the space. So I thank you all for letting us doing that. So the Oli we presented is called Hono Hono Kapalama, which honors the place which our school stands. It calls onto the Kukalahala rain and the Olauni wind. These names tie directly to our school's environment. So the Kukalahala rain is the rain that's so powerful you can hear it onto the roof. And the Olauni wind is the wind which sways the coconuts. So these references might seem small, but they hold a kauna or a deeper meaning. And so it shows us that our ancestors actually gave names to wind, to the rain, and to the land, because we saw it not just as a resource, but as a part of our family. So, and it shows directly how we can localize these SDGs, because with these big kind of complex issues, we think so big, but sometimes it starts small. It starts with knowing the name of your wind. It starts with knowing the name of your rain, honoring where you come from, so that you yearn and you want to protect the land which we come from. So mahalo.
I'm a part of our SDG Youth Council. Aloha mai kako. My name is Samantha Happ, and I am the Network Director, Managing Director for the Hawaii Green Growth Local 2030 Hub and the Local 2030 Islands Network. If it's okay with all of you, I'll choose to sit for a portion of this presentation, just as I consider myself to be amongst friends. It feels like a more casual kind of talk story. As I join you this morning from the island of Oahu, although it's great to be back in the former city of New York. And to bridge of course, the island of Manhattan, but the island of Oahu, and bring the voluntary local review here with the Hawaii delegation. We are honored to be here today on behalf of a few different organizations, and of course, the state of Hawaii and the county of Maui, led by our most honorable mayor, Richard Bisson. Thank you so much, Mayor, for being here today. This team from the county of Maui, the SDG Youth Council from the state of Hawaii and Kaʻāmauloa schools, and of course our new CEO of Hawaii Green Growth, and Makena Apo back there as well, and an incredible community leader, and community development advocate as well, and just a wonderful community of supporters. Many of you in this room have been longtime champions of work from the grassroots level as well. So thank you so much for being here. For those of you that know our work, for those of you that are new to it, thank you for showing up and for wanting to learn more about the way that we are leading both local development in Hawaii as well as community-led development with Aloha Plus as sort of our leading value. And so I'd love to share more about our launch of the Voluntary Local Review. Some of you, yeah, there's a little bit of a woo. And The voluntary local review, I'm not gonna go too much into that bureaucratic process, but really what it is it is a celebration and it is a stock take of how we are progressing towards both our 2030 shared goals that our entire globe has committed to, the 17 SDGs, you see them on the wall behind you, as well as our localized goals. We also have those kind of on the floor behind you and our 6 wheels. So be sure to check those out. You'll see them in our presentation, but we're bringing those with us around the state of Hawaii as well. So we have our local model that spans to our global model and connects the dots there. So we're here to share that with you today. You'll hear that in our presentation. You'll see that in our report. We have some executive summary copies. It just went live on our site today. You'll also hear that in some reflections from our leaders, from our young leaders, from our political leaders, from our community leaders, and our nonprofit leaders as well. So thanks so much for being with us. We hope that this is an interactive dialogue. We hope that you'll stay with us at the end, talk story, get to know one another, and really let us know how this work is impacting you, how you're contributing to it in your communities, what Hawaii means to you, and feel free to visit us if Hawaii is not your home. So if you'll allow me to start and give you a little bit of history, in case this work is not familiar to you. Hawaii Green Growth started as a commitment, and maybe I should first say, I am here representing Hawaii Green Growth, which is now a public-private partnership, but it didn't always start out that way. It was first was a commitment that kind of grew out of the 2008 financial crisis and like the need for a green growth recovery strategy, right? Before sustainability was the buzzword, long before sustainable development goals were adopted, Hawaii was a leader in this realm, certainly because sustainability is inherent to an island worldview and way of life. And so in 2011, a commitment to statewide sustainability came to be. But in 2014, the state adopted 6 localized goals for our statewide sustainability progress that we wanted to see by 2030. Convenient then that in 2015, we have the global SDGs, right? So we had a local framework adopted in 2014. The next year, we then had a global framework. We were able to bridge that gap at a statewide level, knowing that they were both wheels. 6 was easier to digest than 17. And actually, our 6 goals fully encapsulated the 17 goals quite nicely. So you can see right here, our 6 goals span the 17. Many of them encompass much more than what's listed here on the screen. For the sake of not overwhelming you with all the colors, we've dissected them a little bit more cleanly here for you now. So our 6 goals, to call them out now, but hopefully you get familiar with them, are the clean energy transformation, local food production and consumption, natural resource management, solid waste reduction, smart sustainable communities, and green workforce and education. And like all of you in this room, I'm sure are already familiar with the SDGs. These all have their own local indicators and targets, and were defined and came together in a community-led process for how these would be measured, how they would be evaluated, and how we would share data and metrics for the evolution of what these goals would, of course, become, and how we would refine them over time as well, knowing that 2030 was our end goal for the targets there. So what this network then became, right? It was initially a commitment in 2011, became an institutionalized framework in 2014 with the adoption of these goals at a statewide level, is putting a sort of governance structure around this, right? Eventually it became a 501c3 nonprofit with the name Hawaii Green Growth. And why we're mentioning this network now is because Hawaii Green Growth is actually the entity responsible for producing the voluntary local reviews. Countries submit their voluntary national reviews. So if this process is not familiar to you, I'm mentioning this because we are here at the high level political forum, which is when many countries submit their voluntary national reviews to the United Nations, which is their national progress on the SDGs. Of course, there is the voluntary at the front of that word. So cities and regions and subnational entities are not required to submit these. But Hawaii has now decided to do this for the 3rd time at a statewide level. And really this comes down to 4 reasons why we were able to do this. And it comes to 4 commitments. And this is part of the Hawaii Growth Network. It is our 4 pillars of operation. And it underpins everything that we do, both as a 501c3 nonprofit, as part of our network, and as part of our commitments that all of our members, which is open to anybody as an individual, as a nonprofit, as a private entity, as a government agency, commit to when they join Hawaii Green Growth. The first is that we seek political leadership and local goal setting and commitment to both of those things, right? So the idea that we have these 2030 goals, both local and global, and you are committing to the goals that are already there, right? Of course, new administrations have their own strategies and have their own priorities and their own agendas to be set, but we are stewarding the sustainability commitments that our community has set for us and committing to innovation and evolution, as well as Indigenous, local, and cultural knowledge that it pre-exists us to getting us there to the commitments that we've made before us. And we work in concert with one another, as well as the commitments made before us to continue those goals. So we work at the statewide level with our governor, with all of our mayors, with our county councils, with our state legislature to make that a multiple and multi-layered approach to political leadership for that local goal setting. We also work with our public and private partners. We have a public-private partnership, which is our 501c3 nonprofit, but we work across public and private partners with our academic institutions and our universities. We work with our nonprofit partners and civil society organizations, because everyone scattered in between, knowing that we will work with, as our CEO says, we will work with anyone and everyone that's committed to achieving these goals, and we will figure out the best possible way to all commit to making those goals possible and happen. And we'll get innovative in doing so. So if you have ideas on how to do that, knowing that these goals are so important, we want to work with you. The third pillar is that we measure these goals and our progress towards these goals. We can't know how we're doing, we can't get there if we're not being honest, transparent, and accountable about where we are and our progress towards these goals. So I'll get to that in a moment, but we do have a dashboard, and our dashboard is more than just a scorecard and a report, which becomes a static document that we turn in every couple of years to the UN. This is a living, breathing data repository. One of our partners is in the room that helps support us with that, Esri, and helps us measure this data in real time. That, of course, comes from our community. And lastly, we have concrete action, implementation, the community partners that are driving the innovation towards these goals. Right. So this is the local innovators that know what's happening in their communities, in their homes, in their schools, that are saying, I see an issue, I see a challenge, I see an opportunity, and I'm marrying action to that. And we present all of that back to our communities in our working groups, on our dashboards. So marrying that quantitative and qualitative data to show real progress. And so this is a little bit more on our process cycle. This is in our VLR report, and we break it down a little bit more. But we love the wheel. We love circular things. Islands are the original circular economies, as we say. And so we bring it back to circles as much as we can in all of its forms. And so how we work is we constantly set, we bring it back to our 2030 goals. We're always setting these goals and how our community and our working groups, our partners, can be contributing to those, right? You can jump in at any point in the cycle, knowing that you're automatically contributing to those, right? If you're a sustainability partner, you're doing something in that realm. And a lot of times we all have shared goals. We might just be at different ends of those spectrums, right? You might be working in local food, you might be working in energy, you might be working in education. Where are those cross-sectoral linkages, and how can we be better communicating on where those overlaps lie? And how can we then work together through this partnership to reduce those duplications and reduce silos, and know that we can get there faster when we go together. Our structure right now is that we have a few different working groups that we bring together over mutually identified goals and priorities specifically for Hawaii. We have one on policy and legislation. So this is where we bring partners across every sector in sustainability, essentially everybody working on all 17 SDGs. And we say, how do we drive forward progress specifically in the policy and legislation sector at the local, at the state, and at the national, and sometimes global levels. We also have one on measures and data. So this is how are we talking about what we're measuring on our dashboard, how we are driving forward progress, targets, indicators, what is needing to be refined, our collection process for data, etc. We also bring together our private partners, well, recognizing that sometimes the private and public sectors don't always play nice together. And so we have a sustainability business forum that enables driving forward, not just ESG metrics, but really all of the SDGs with a friendly neighborhood of private sector partners that are also supporting and investing and driving forward progress in their own communities and their own friendly circles, but also within our larger community as well. And then lastly, we have a localized model. In Hawaii, we have an Akapua'a system, which is our watershed system, and it's particularly where our offices are located, and the community may be familiar to many of you from Waikiki. We have the Olowai watershed, and this is how we talk about our watershed management, the integration of natural resources, and it's also where we are putting to test the localization of our model. It's bringing together partners in that way to put our policy tools, our innovation, really to the local level of implementation. So we can share a little bit more about what's coming out of that working group in particular in our panel here. We have a few more other working groups. One in particular I'd love to highlight, that I'll get to in just a moment, includes some of our distinguished young people. But really what these working groups do is they become a bridge for all of the different sustainability priorities that are happening across Hawaii, and ensuring that people working towards shared goals actually know what other folks are doing, right? So it's the idea that our food sector does need to be talking to our energy sector. When you're advancing economic goals, you do need to know what's going on in the human rights sector, and you do need to know what's going on in the solid waste sector, right? And so it's a simple concept, but we realize that it can't be a government entity necessarily, and it can't be a private sector partner that are bringing these groups together. And it has to be a trust-based space that continually and constantly evolves and builds relationships with community to bring these partners together, to have these sometimes hard conversations about trade-offs, about progress, about where the data gaps are, and particularly that can foster a space for collaboration to have these meaningful conversations about where we're going and how we're going to get there. So as I was mentioning, these include our public and private sector partners. You'll see a familiar face up there with Mayor Grayson, and one of our former mayors as well. Also with Makena, your partner in the room. We've got some of our SDG Youth Council members up there with our governor, and some of our private sector partners up there as well. But really the intention is to include everybody and everyone. We would love for our membership and our network to be the entire state of Hawaii, which is how we see it right now as well. And would love for everyone to identify as a member of Hawaii Green Growth. I would also love to include what we are working towards. So in the 2023 voluntary local review, this is a really special report for us because we asked where are we, not just what have we done, but where are we going, right? So that's an important point for us, is it's not just 2030. I know there's a lot of discussion amongst the circles that I'm in of what's happening post 2030. But we localize that conversation to say, well, what is the future that we want for Hawaii in particular, right? Like we can have that conversation on the global scale, but we need to know what the local goals are that we are advancing, and what that means for our keiki, for our hamana, our students, our children, and why it matters to us. And so we said, who better to ask actually than the group of Hawaii? And so we have an SDG council, 5 of which our members are up here, but of course this spans to many of their peers. They brought an initial delegation of their peers to the United Nations with Governor Green a few years ago to deliver the 2023 report. Yes, so huge congratulations to them. And they've since returned, only bolder and braver, wiser since then, and have delivered much impact as well in between. But they actually wrote the foreword to the report. And this video that I'd love to share, this 2-minute video, is actually their verbal, they're speaking of the forward. So it's their vision, the future that we want for Hawaii. So if you'll allow us to play it now, you can kind of see how that's been a guiding vision for us in the work that we do.
Our values, culture, and indigenous knowledge have strengthened Hawaii and its people for 1,000 years.
We must sustain our islands and natural resources.
By maintaining a balance,
Focus on caring for the island.
when we look at the Kaʻāmauloa structure of the world, we see thriving ecosystems,
Vibrant cultures.
and reciprocal relationships. A'ole Honolulu, Ke'alu'u. Familiarizing the people of the world with this way of thinking is a critical step in creating brighter Hawaii. The future of Hawaii and island depends on. This mindset based on beacon and today's modern technology and knowledge has the potential to create a sustainable future for islanders. As Hawaii's,
This is our vision and our vision.
we believe that it will take care of the earth,
It will take care of us. And if we take care of each other, the world will get richer and fairer places for everyone.
when we think of the Aloha Plus Challenge, we think of the world
Sustainable development goals.
in order to achieve. It needs a picture of what we've accomplished and what we must work to create. War, hunger, violence, racism, and inequality are starting to seep into the minds of everyone, especially the youth.
It shouldn't be normal for a young child to hear about war
And think nothing of it. It shouldn't be normal for a teenager to watch the news and not be affected by the opinion of others. We want our children to be future servant leaders,
be educated.
compassionate, healthy, and productive. We want to take them to our favorite beaches
Without having to dodge plastic and sin.
see a planet empty of poverty and starvation. We see a world that facilitates over the interests of business. We see equality and equal opportunities as norm, not an exception. We visualize the future for Hawaii, islands, and
But we are quantifying the effects of climate change. We took steps to fight it now. The future has limited responsibilities.
but our current values and lifestyle do not serve our time in the future. We cannot put off changing things any longer. We refuse to stare at the moving
While 2030 moves closer and closer.
We, the youth of Hawaii, we the youth of town that have spoke to the past for wisdom and to the future for survival. We only have one island planet. Let's do our best to take care of it and its one planet.
One chance.
Really incomparable keep them up.
Of course, thanks to our incredible leaders up here for sharing that vision to their colleagues not here with them today. So this was our forward in the VLR a couple of years ago. But we, of course, said, how do we improve upon that? And so for our 2025 report, these young leaders sitting in front of us today, as well as many of their colleagues, are actually report authors. So the report that you see online, in addition to many of the other colleagues in the room, Jillian and others who you'll hear from in just a minute, have actually written parts of the report. There's an entire youth section that outlines how the Aloha Plus schools are being localized, implemented, and experienced by the young people of Hawaii. And so this is an effort that is part of one of our working groups that I wanted to share about. It's called the SDG Youth Council. And we'll hear a little bit more from our students here in a bit on the panel. But what I wanted to note now is that our working group model and structure that we lead from Hawaii Green Growth is really this cross-sectoral, this kakao effort, which is really a holistic and full of community approach. And we believe that if we want to go far, we must go together, and we must be led by our young people and the future that they want to see. And so at the generous invitation of Mayor Bisson and his team, this wonderful group of leaders convened a peer activation workshop for the Aloha Plus schools and SDGs in Maui, on Maui, with their peers. But then they also did similar workshops across Oahu, and they've done other forms of sustainability summits and policy exercises and other forms of engagement work across the state. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention right now that I know we have an expansive understanding of youth in the UN system. I think it goes up to age 35, not older in many cases, but these young people are actually still under the age of 18. and they're high school students. So if we have not yet caught that, these young people actually, cannot get into many of the buildings here because require chaperones. So we're taking youth down even younger. So quite an impressive feat. Are giving up their extracurricular activities to lead this for their peers. So a really big mahalo nui to you all. Thank you so much. Maybe the last thing I'll say here is that and I'll mention it in the next slide too, is that we are a data-driven organization. So we care deeply about how we're measuring impact on the goals, but we believe that data is not just quantitative, it's also qualitative. Storytelling is a very big part of our work, how we experience the goals, how we experience living the goals as well, and the future that we want to see is an incredible part of the work that we seek to communicate and do at Hawaii Growth and beyond. And so, of course, it's not just the future that we want to see, it's the commitment to sustainability that we want to live. And the report this year is focused on building a culture of sustainability, which was actually a tagline that was, or maybe kind of a focus area that was gifted as to Hawaii Green Growth when it was first accepted. And this you'll see it on the back of our report. This Hinahona Aioia means a culture of sustainability. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that on the panel, about how all of our leaders are contributing to that. But actually, the youth section of the report talks about how they would like to see this future play out and how the goals are being experienced this way. And then this piece of artwork is actually something that came from the Maui Youth Summit. And this collection of artwork is actually many of our young leaders' visions for what this might look like, and is explained a little bit further in the report. So you'll have to check it out. And bridging the storytelling with the actual data, because I know that's a big part of how we do our targets and indicators. Our big product, as we can say, that we produce, and actually my colleague Jill in the back leads, is our Aloha Plus dashboard. And so this is online on the state.gov website. So it is hosted on sort of our government platform. But really, this is our open data tool as an accountability and transparency form of keeping ourselves on track and accountable to these 2030 goals. So this is just one screenshot of the homepage of our scorecard for the main metrics and indicators for our 6 Aloha Plus goals, but we measure progress towards our 17 SDGs. We have story maps on the qualitative stories about how all of our community partners are actualizing these goals. We go deep into the targets and indicators of each of these. We've got the graphs, and we pull in all sorts of community-led and informed data. And we're also exploring, as the next iteration, how can this be more citizen-informed? How can community be actively involved in this? We have a Take the Challenge website as well, which is like, how can folks get to this and how can they learn sustainability through their actions, right? Both in the form of things that might be more familiar in terms of reducing impact and imprint, but also how can we be shifting that more in terms of local values as well. But we're seeking to expand this next iteration, knowing that we're 5 years away from our goals and we're not quite there. So in the next section of the report, while we're not going to go deep into the main report highlights, because you can read that as well. And we'll do a local launch that really dives into that for our local community. We did want to give you the key takeaways today. But certainly on our dashboard, the main point that I wanted to convey to all of you is that a report that we've only printed a few copies of, because we're a sustainability organization, of course, is a report in time. Our dashboard is a living report. So all of the data is going to be continuously updated, as it always is. And so immediately once the report is published, it's outdated, right? Because we're continuously making edits and updates to this. And so that's the real value out of having something like this versus just doing a report every 2 years. In hopes that our policymakers, our students, our academics, our researchers have a repository of active and living data to go to versus referencing a report 2 to 3 years ago. And maybe the last thing that I'll mention before handing it over, so you actually can get to the real heart of this presentation, which is how is Hawaii doing on our progress. is that this initiative, this public-private partnership in Hawaii has actually been deemed a local 2030 coalition initiative for high impact initiative for reaching the 2030 goals. We are, as the second part of our name is Hawaii Green Growth, is a local 2030 hub. And what that means is that in 2019, Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed of the United Nations said that if we were to achieve the SDGs by 2030, so we do this 3 years in the SDGs, that if we're going to achieve them, we actually have to achieve them at the local level. 69% of our targets have to be achieved at the local level, or they're not going to be achieved at all. Meaning that we can say at the national level, we can send our heads of state, we can report at the national level, but actually rubber meets the road down local level ground. And so we were looking to, or the UN was looking to local communities that were already doing the work, bringing partners together, and doing it well. And Hawaii Green Growth was already in operation, didn't have any UN connections at the time, and then was deemed as kind of a center of excellence, and tapped for its processing, building the dashboard and this process model for doing it well. So it's given this UN distinction of a local 2030 hub, and then asked to help scale this model further. It created the Local 2030 Islands Network. So it serves as the secretariat along with the Global Island Partnership for the Secretariat of the Local 2030 Islands Network, which is a global initiative for the achievement of the SDGs at the local level. And through this initiative, it has now created very similar organizations in other islands around the world. In Guam, in Palau, in the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, and as of 2 weeks ago, in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. So these islands have all committed to launching their own dashboards, their own public-private partnerships, in very similar models, but of course, in their own locally and culturally relevant ways to help bridge this gap further. So with that, and maybe I can start making the transition over to the Hawaii side of things, but really what this means is that we are deeply committed to our local goal setting. And if I can just share anything, as was just making the connection, right? The global model is something that we all understand the deep commitment of. Hawaii's significance in that is that we are still the only state to have done any voluntary local review. So cheers to that. And US national US VNRs, right? The United States has still not submitted a US national VNR. Having Hawaii submit this from a statewide level ensures the coordination, not just between the counties and at the state, but really to showcase what this continuous innovation can be, and how we can collaborate across islands and across the world for this local to state, and even showcase this subnational diplomacy as well. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to my colleague Jill to show you a little bit more about what's happening at the local level, dive a little bit deeper, knowing that despite all of this wonderful innovation, we're still a long way off from our goals. But really, it's the people in the room that are helping us get there faster. We'd love to talk story with you after the event too, to figure out how we get there. So Jill, over to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Aloha, everyone. Jillian Cristobal, please call me Jill. I feel like I could talk forever about what's in the report, but it's just going to be a brief overview for you folks today. And so as Sam mentioned earlier, we have 6 local goals. So clean energy transformation, local food production and consumption, natural resource management, solid waste reduction, smart sustainable communities, and green workforce and education. And you're probably all wondering, well, how is Hawaii doing? This is our 3rd report. And so we have across these 6 goals, 35 targets. And so based off of the process of establishing what are we measuring, what matters to us in our locally relevant context. As you can see, clean energy, we got some on track targets. Natural resource management, we are making steady progress on some of our targets, but a lot of it is, or could use some improvement, some TLC, and a lot of it is also measuring. So in the report, you'll see a breakdown of all the key findings, some trends behind each of the targets that kind of analyze what is the trajectory of how we're doing, what is the background context behind why the status is the way it is. And so I'm not gonna share or deep dive into all of that with you folks today, but wanted to highlight some just across the goals in general. How are we doing collectively? So you'll see here that clean energy, where you have a lot of momentum, that we're making good progress on like renewable electricity, electro generation as well. And then we have some initiatives stewarding clean energy transformation in the transportation sector. And so this is really setting the groundwork for broader community action to come and to support their clean energy sector. In the local food production and consumption, we're seeing a lot of strong community leadership filling gaps where county or state level services are not quite meeting the progress that they need in their local communities. So a lot of community leadership stewarding those, and I'll talk a little bit about one of our action spotlights in a moment. And for natural resource management, we're seeing a growing recognition for the need for nature-based solutions and INA stewardship. So how can we have these nature-based solutions looking at the Ahupua'a system, our land management from Mauka to Makai, mountain to the ocean, of how can we take care of our natural resources, and everything we do upland affects downstream. And so more movement towards that in our natural resource management goal. And for solid waste reduction, there's a lot of progress that could be made, I would say. I feel personally it's an often neglected part of our goals. People don't really like to talk about waste or what happens after, but also there is the opportunity through infrastructure upgrades as well as policy to really move the needle on this. It's just coming together to get that going. And then as far as smart sustainable communities, this is kind of a more all-encompassing goal. So we look at like natural resource and disaster recovery, as well as affordable housing, but also connection to place and livable communities. So we are seeing, in lieu of all the natural disasters and impacts to the community, really leadership at the community level to help with those recovery efforts and plan for the future. And so there's also a big highlight or emphasis on INA stewardship to mitigate before all of that happens. So our green workforce and education goal, also seeing a lot of great community efforts, and this one we're not sharing this action spotlight here, but you'll see it in the report, is our sector partnerships. And so we're seeing in collaboration across industries to help build our green workforce and education to keep local talent here in Hawaii. And so that's like clean energy, but also natural resources, technology. So there is a growing community stewarding that moving forward. So please check out the report, as this is, we're trying to speak to all 35 targets, and there's 6 goals, and each of the targets has their own story, and you can dive into more of what the challenges and barriers are, but also what are the strategies for improvement. And so my favorite part of the report is, what are the communities doing? What are the programs and initiatives that are kind of bridging the gap between, yes, we have the data, we lead the process to convene and pull together partners to identify these challenges that the dashboard points out. But where are the opportunities that communities can get involved? We can innovate to move the needle a little bit faster. And so the first one, our Clean Energy Wayfinders program. So this is out of the Hawaii State Energy Office, and it's enhancing partnerships between community stakeholders and the energy industry to advance our goals. And so they are addressing green workforce education as well as clean energy transformation to really steward and foster this new generation of energy leaders across Hawaii. And the great part about this is that there's a community wayfinder on each island. So they work directly with the communities and with government. And one of my other favorite ones, I shouldn't call out favorites, but I work closely with them. So this is increasing access to food through food hubs. And so the Food Hub really is a statewide coalition of these different community-driven food hubs. So they strengthen connections from small scale farmers to distribution networks, really getting and increasing access for local communities to local food. And so they work together as a coalition, and these are just some of our partners who have helped and collaborated with us to actually share with us their metrics of how their programs are progressing. So what is their impact in their community? How are they evaluating if they're meeting the needs? And so they share that data with us, and we bridge that with storytelling to kind of frame what they're seeing on the ground. And so all of these organizations here have action spotlights in the form of Esri ArcGIS story maps, which you can see on the dashboard. And so we recently just published Ho'ola Farms as well. And so we plan to update these as progress continues. As you saw in the earlier slide, there's a lot of needs improvement, and sometimes the data isn't quite there at the federal or state or county level yet. So having these bright spots and community organizations sharing their data with us really helps bridge that gap and shows how they're making progress in their. And the last action spotlight I'll share with you today is about the Hawaii Climate Change and Health Working Group. So this is also a cross-sector collaboration group that we are heavily involved with. And so they're looking at what is the intersection between climate change and health across like local food, drought, extreme heat. So really taking that kind of lens and applying it to that pinwheel of all those topic areas. And so they're involved in looking at the data, but also evaluating policy and legislation. So what are the opportunities for this group of cross-sector stakeholders to get involved? And so it's a relatively new group, but they're making a lot of great progress. And the Dashboard Lab program that I steward along with other members of my team, it's based on looking at capstone students at the college level. So they were able to support evaluation of legislation that passed in 2025 and 2024, and then they provided that analysis to then take action this past legislation, which led to Hawaii announcing that climate change as a health priority. So drawing the connection to climate change, that it's also a public health issue, and so that just sets the resolution and groundwork to activate future action. Getting ahead of myself, but so that's just a brief overview of how we're doing, what the dashboard is telling us. So it identifies the gaps, but through our process, we're able to connect with our network to derive, okay, what are the next steps and how do we take action? And so that's kind of what the report highlights speak to, and you'll see that in the key findings, the strategies for improvement, and then, you know, how and what are community organizations doing to help bridge those gaps and make an impact in their community where possible. I'll pass it back over to Sam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. All right, so now you've heard kind of our main report highlights, but we'd really love to turn it over to continue the bright spots and hear from our community that has generously come all the way from Hawaii. And if you wouldn't believe it, you can really only take red eyes to get here. So thank you to everyone that has taken a long haul flight, sometimes multiple flights, to join us. And I would really love to invite up now distinguished members of our panel. We have Mayor Bissen from Maui. We have our CEO, Kaʻāmauloa. We have Makena Apo, one of the she's here somewhere. And then we have 3 members of our youth council. We have Makena, Serena, and Cooper. Please make your way up to the stage if you wouldn't mind. Yeah. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Again, so we're gonna now talk story a little bit about how these incredible leaders are building a culture of sustainability in their own work. So you've already heard a little bit from our youth council, or at least seen some of their work. We have a distinguished mayor with us that's leading this work in this county. Community leader and our CEO of Hawaii Green Road. But before we get into it, before we talk a little bit about how they are building this culture of sustainability throughout the state of Hawaii and their own local communities, I'd like to first turn over the mic to them. Allow them to introduce them in their own words. Of course, they have their bios. They're incredibly distinguished. You'll see them on our website. But first, maybe in a way of grounding of, we're building this culture of sustainability because we care about our islands, our homes that we work to protect. So maybe if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves in the way that you prefer to, and then a place that you love from home that you are working to care for, to steward, to protect. People need to start with Serena.
Well, my name is Serena Duarte. I'm from Honolulu. Okay, can y'all hear me? Okay. My name is Serena Duarte. I'm from Oahu, Hawaii. Specifically, my Hawaiian side of my family is from Honolulu, Nuku'anu. It's a pretty big city as the capital. So that's my place that I'm working to protect because a lot of development, but we still need to preserve our land, as Sam mentioned. And I'm from Kamehameha Schools Kapalama, going into 11th grade and a member of the Hawaii SDG Youth Council. And I will pass it to you.
Aloha, or hello, my name is Makena. I'm also part of the Hawaii SDG Youth Council. I am from Aiea, Hawaii, which is pretty central to the island. It's very developed, similar to where Serena lives. I care about sustainability because I see some poverty in my community, and I see homelessness is a very big issue. And I think that everything is interconnected, as we know. Sustainability connects to housing, connects to jobs, connects to everything that we see in our communities. So I think that sustainability is a way to solve the issues that we see. And that's how I took a chance to change the world.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cooper Long. I am originally from Fort Leonard, Missouri, but I now live down the hill from Kaʻāmauloa. The reason why I engaged in sustainability and I care so much about sustainability is because I did not grow up in Hawaii. I grew up all over the mainland. And I lived in some difficult places, and I realized how special Hawaii is, and I realized the power that Hawaii has as a group of islands in the middle of the biggest ocean in the world. So I'm passionate because I understand how important it is.
Aloha mai kākou. Te lina mai pakahi apau. Mahalo hele na mai. Thank you everybody for being here, taking the time to come and welcome. I'm Rick Bisson from Maui. I just wanted to point out a couple of things if I can go a little bit off script. I think having these youth here is really symbolic of what all of this is about. You know, we have this obligation that we have been given in our home, Hawaii, which is the air, the land, the sea, the ocean. And we have this obligation to hand it over to the next generation in the same way or better than we got it. And so for them to be here and leading this in a lot of ways really tells the story of how it should be. Cooper mentioned we come from probably one of the most isolated places in the world. And our ancestors have survived there for centuries. They've survived there without anybody else intervening. So that is the proof that they know what they were doing. They respected everything that was about it. I think the word interconnected is a good word too, because it talks about how important it is for us to understand that our ancestors were very keen observers. They understood when something happened, another thing would happen, right? We call it cause and effect on this side. But they understood all that. They knew when to plant, when to fish. They understood the rhythm of the world in our place. And so that's what we're trying to, I guess, highlight or to bring to the attention of others that whatever was going on was working. Some of the smartest people in there. I know it sounds like we're bragging on Hawaii during this session, and I guess we are, but we're highlighting some of the things that people either already know or have not been exposed to. So I'm eager to hear the rest from my youth.
Hello, me kako. Mahina Paishan. I come to you from a small little 2-acre coffee farm, the slopes of Hualalai volcano on Hawaii Island in Hawaii. And first of all, I want to thank the first people of this land, I understand, I got to meet with them when Hokulea came in 2016 and their continued work to care for their marine ecosystems and their freshwater systems. I also want to acknowledge our hosts here at Impact Hub. Thank you for creating this community, and of course to the HGG Ohana, their vision for its continued leadership and his staff when Maui, and of course our next generation leaders. So what I'll quickly say is I feel most home on a double hull Voyaging canoe, 54 feet long, about 21 feet wide. And the reason why I feel most home there is because, you know, we live in a really chaotic world, beautiful world in our best moments, but also very chaotic. And so I feel most centered with all the things that these intelligent people have spoken about when I'm on the ocean. And the reason for that is because I'm stripped down of my egoic ways sometimes. I'm just a human here. And I like feeling surrendered to natural environmental systems, spiritual systems as well, and cultural systems that have guided our ancestors and continue to guide our future ancestors. So that's the reason why I am so thrilled and humbled to be a part of this HGG network and our leadership here.
Aloha kako. I'm Kalani. I have the distinction of sitting here at the feet of giants in my mind. And so I think it's really fitting that I'm here because I think so much of what prepares us to share and highlight the work at home of these partnerships is really the relationality between all of us and the interconnectedness of it all. And so you heard some of the youth this morning opening with their oli that connected us to their place. And I think, I hope each of us can find a way to do that today in this work and find the relationality and the similarities or differences between our work and our experience and your own perhaps. But I'm really grateful to sit at the intersection of this work because it really is a beautiful thing to see some of the most difficult conversations happen. And maybe as a little bit of context, this is day 9 for me. So I'm still learning a lot, but I've actually been involved with HDG for quite a long time. I just recently left the Hawaii Tourism Authority, which is our state agency for our largest economic driver, which is tourism. And so certainly for us at home, I think we all understand the impacts, positive and negative, about tourism. And so really I've been trying to figure out how we shift the Overton window on a lot of things within tourism. But now I get to do it with some incredible people across all of our sectors in Hawaii. And I think I'm most excited about that. So,
We're so lucky to have this panel amongst us and all of these giants, actually, regardless of where they're sitting. But I would also love to bring into the room our former CEO. Kalani has mentioned he's day 9 on the job, and we are so lucky to have his leadership. He's been a long part of our journey, but of course Celeste Connors, who many of you know her personally and her name, but she has been stewarding this movement for years now, and of course this report as well. So she's unable to be here this week, but really she is a giant in her own right. So sending much love and aloha to her and thanking her for her leadership as well.
Sam, can we share where she's at now? Because I think it's, like Paul mentioned last night, a force multiplier for this work. Celeste took a role at the East-West Center. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's actually a program of the State Department, if I'm not mistaken, based at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and that really tries to bridge East and West. Was created by Senator Inouye and some other leaders back in the day to be that bridge. And so we're really excited to still share an office with Celeste. She's now on the 1st floor. And so, yeah, she's the president of the East-West Center.
Well, my first question for the panel, I'm actually going to turn, I know we have humble giants among us, to our youth. We learned an experience when we were here a couple of years ago. We were at an event hosted by a good partner and friend of ours in the room here, UN Foundation, that we actually need to have our young people speak first. It holds the adults in the room accountable. Too often, young people are left to the end of the program. The adults have left, the diplomats, the dignitaries have left. So what is that saying to our young people? That your voice doesn't matter, that you are left to the end program? So we don't stand for that in our work. And so we give the mic first to our young people. I hope that's okay with everybody here. But I know that our crew is certainly cool with that. So I'd love to turn first maybe to Cooper, but we'll share the mic. And I invite, of course, our panelists to jump in too with any reflections. So just raise your hand, I'll pass the mic over. But Cooper, can you share a little bit about really what building a culture of sustainability means, and how you are actualizing that, how you are implementing that, and what that verbiage actually looks like in action from your perspective.
Right. Okay, so everyone, show of hands, who has visited Hawaii or lived in Hawaii? Okay, so a decent amount. Who has no idea what we're talking about when we talk about our culture and about like certain phrases like ʻaʻupuaʻa or what you call it, that kind of stuff? Show of hands. Who has no idea? No shame at all. Okay, perfect. We'll try our best to explain everything. So one thing that you all have seen, I'm sure, is when you come to Hawaii, there's the beaches, there's the sun, there's the palm trees, the coconuts, the luau's, all the stuff. What you all don't see sometimes though is what we face, all of us here sitting on the panels, the front lines of sustainability, of climate change, of culture. And while Hawaii does have the beaches, and while Hawaii does have the luau, while Hawaii does have the culture, we still have to go to the grocery store, we still have to go to school, we still have to fix our pop tires on the side of a highway. But while we do the normal everyday life things, we keep our culture the center. On an island, we grow our community very quickly because you have to survive alongside everyone. And it takes a community just to live on an island. So you rely on other people, you rely on everyone. And you help those around you, which is kind of what the Hawaiian culture is about community and about caring for one another, about malama, caring, and about really ensuring that the island which sustains you thrives. Because if the land is vibrant, if the land is thriving, you will thrive as a result of that. So.
Just to touch on what you just talked about right at the end, it's a reciprocal relationship, and we believe in that completely in our culture and in the island. We believe that if we take care of the land will take care of ourselves. We see the land as our sibling, as our family. And I think that's what drives our initiative, and that's what drives our culture of sustainability, is because we see it as a family member. It's because we see it as something to take care of, someone to take care of, rather than, like we said earlier, just a resource to be used.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about SDG 18?
So way back in 8th grade, we had an assignment in class where we had to come up with the next SDG, so SDG 18. And we had free reign over anything. We could pick any topic we wanted to. But the consensus was amongst the four different classes was culture needs to be involved in the SDGs. The reason why the SDGs aren't being delivered upon is because there's no relationship to it, there's no personal connection. But if you can find a way to tie the cultural background, your indigenous background into not having poverty, having education, taking care of life below water, you can then be passionate about delivering on it and actually working with it. So we came up with SDG 18 cultural vibrancy. And my poster got thrown away in class, accidentally. It was lost. But it's a way to really have a personal connection to SDGs and kind of have a unifying theme amongst them in something that is not present now. And it might not be clear to everyone like a New Yorker who's lived here all their lives, it might not be clear at first, but when you kind of start to pick apart the details and look at the circular aspect of it, it really does tie into culture in a circular way.
There's just something I wanted to add about that. Culture is, in my mind, how I define it, it's not just being Native Hawaiian, it's not just being a certain ethnicity, it's about the spaces you share, the people you share those spaces with, the people you choose to surround yourselves with. And I think that's how, like you said, that's how we deliver on the SDGs, is by surrounding ourselves with the people who will help us to achieve that, who will help us to lift each other up to achieve our goals. And it's choosing the culture that you want to be a part of.
If I may add something else, so as Cooper mentioned, there was one consensus of cultural vibrancy being a constant. And the other consensus was that youth need to be involved, as we also talked about, because not only does having a cultural perspective that benefit sustainability, but also the youth's perspective, because we see things on the front lines different from what adults see. And so I feel that that can also be worked in as an aspect of SDG 18, but we settled on cultural vibrancy as the primary.
I know we have other panelists, I'll switch to them in a minute, but I wanted to talk a moment about your journeys on this Kaʻāmauloa pathway. So these students have participated in a really unique educational experience as well, that bridges the local pathway with the global pathway, which is where they've actually had this assignment for SDG 18. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
I can start. So basically the tagline for our courses, if you will, is journey from the Lo'i College to the United Nations. So we start our course grounding ourselves in our culture, our Hawaiian culture specifically, in our ancestors' ways, our kupuna's ways of living, of doing things, of living together. And then we work ourselves up to doing things like this, sharing across the world, across the nation, and sharing what we have learned in our culturally grounded ways, and sharing with people so that they can understand it in their own ways.
So in a way, 7th grade is grounding yourself in culture. 8th grade is learning how it relates to the global level and how powerful is the global level. 9th and 10th grade is enacting it, going across the globe and speaking and doing. And then 11th and 12th grade is engaging youth and empowering youth and activating youth so that they understand the power that they have just as a child. So in our 9th and 10th grade ventures, if you will, I've traveled to Tokyo, Japan, to speak with Keio University students, both high school and intermediate, on what other countries are doing as far as sustainability goes. We hope to set up a student exchange with them so we can continue to talk about sustainability and regenerative systems. We had several local summits where we went to public schools, private schools, charter schools. We spoke with kids who were our age when we started this pathway. And we just wanted to learn about what you think about the issues that are present, that might be present to us, and we might think everyone deals with, but we wanted to really confirm that. And then also Maui and Kentucky.
Yes, so as you guys saw in the pictures on the slideshow before, we did host a youth convening in Maui, and we partnered with students from Lahaina Luna, students from Kamehameha Maui campus, and other students from other schools as well. And it was mainly about gaining perspectives, gaining stories, because data is amazing and data is how we really measure our progress. But stories is what makes it personal. Stories is how people pay attention. Stories is how we get the attention of big leaders at the United Nations. That's how the mix of the stories and the data is how we make change. So Maui was a great representation of that, because we were talking to students who unfortunately lost their homes in the fire or dealt with issues like that. And it was just inspiring and invigorating to talk to them and learn about their story, learn about who they are and how they came to know about sustainability in their lives.
Previously, before that, so the Maui and Oahu summits were for the 2025 VLR input, but previously, I believe 2023, we did a Big Island Summit similar to that, where we talked to you not just about their personal stories, but more about what they want to see and specifically what policies we wanted to enact, and then ended up putting together a draft of resolutions to submit to politicians.
Residents, we were in very good hands with our young people. I feel very confident, at least about where our future is going. And thank their kumu, their teachers, for stewarding their futures in such bright ways. So this is just a very brief glimpse at the future that they are building and activating amongst their peers. But I'd really love to hear also from those that have been leading this work for just a little bit longer. I know Cooper said way back in 8th grade, which was 2 years ago. But maybe we can expand that timeline just a little bit longer and hear from some of our other leaders on the panel about how they are contributing to building a culture of sustainability in their work. And so I did a disservice by not reading their full bios, but I'm hopeful that in their Bison's intro, of course, he can share with you, of course, his expansive career, both as a mayor and well before that in his judicial career as well. And then, of course, when we pass on to Hina and others, how are you building a culture of sustainability in your work, and what are your priorities there for your tenure and moving forward as well?
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention some people who are with me today. Because I think all you need to know about me is that I'm a husband and a father and a grandfather. But I'm here with my wife, Ka'ihi Kapulani. I'm here with my chief of staff, Cynthia Lalo. And I'm here with my director of communications and government affairs, Lox Abraham. So I just wanted to thank them for being part of this journey. We eventually got here this morning. But you know what, I'll just say, I wanted to comment on the how we see the land as being our relative. So the word, since we're learning Hawaiian words today, aina is the word that we use, malama aina, to care for the land, take care of the land. But the root word of aina, it's often said as land, but the word ai is to eat or food. And so aina actually translated can mean that which sustains us, that which sustains us. And it's not just for food, but it sustains us in many ways. Maybe that helps with an understanding of how we see it, and how important it becomes, because that's how we survive. And of course, the same can be said of our waters, oceans, fresh water. I think we're speaking to the choir today. So we're talking to everybody who I think understands this work and agrees with this work already. I think we're just emphasizing why it's extra special on an island. Because if we don't practice this, then we don't sustain ourselves. And I will just say that the opposite is also true. I mentioned the word aina. There's no word in Hawaiian language for sustainability. There's no word in Hawaiian language. Because you didn't need that word. Because they already knew that that's how you live. So I know we had the phrase "he mohona ai oia," and I think put together the culture of sustainability, you know, combining different thoughts and words together. But there is no single word for that, and I think that says a lot about what our people knew and our ancestors. I'll leave it at that.
Question for you about how you're contributing to building a culture of sustainability. And thank you, Mayor, for that context setting that word doesn't translate directly into a lot of like Hawaiian. But Makena, maybe I could just say before you do, because your career is also quite extensive, and how you contribute to community as an educator and a bridge builder, and really just building a legacy that is connecting land to people and place. However you want to answer that question, we'd love to hear.
Sure, thanks, Sam. I'll just share a couple of short examples. The first is Kalani and I are actually co-architects, co-founders of the movement in Hawaii through the vehicle of Aina Aloha Economic Futures. And essentially, we're asking ourselves, how do we reimagine an economy that is going to address and balance cultural vibrancy, the health of our ecosystems, to assure equity and justice for all residents. And how do we do that in a way that's led by our ancestral values across space and time? So we put together this coalition during COVID, highly motivated to like rethink all of the systems that are harmful to us as a society, local community. And then start to invite lots of conversations of, you know, how do we build on what's been working, and then how do we perhaps in the new systems that are going to take us farther towards the future that we are dreaming about. So through our Aloha Economic Futures work, very similar to Aloha Plus and SDGs, we built out a set of tools essentially for community to come together to have conversations around 10 different dimensions, assessment dimensions, that is led by cultural behaviors, attitudes, and perspectives that will help an entrepreneur, a land developer, a policymaker, a philanthropist, and regular, just working class person, just regular person, trying to, you know, just make it in Hawaii, which is, you know, Honolulu is the second, I believe, costliest city to live in the United States currently. So really tough, right? So essentially, we wanted to build out community level systems to build upon the frameworks that you just heard about today, to ensure that there's this integration across the higher level, macro level systems, from, you know, the UN level to the state level, and now getting to the county and into the regions on every island. What have we seen from this work? We've seen a couple of things. One, I'll give you a very specific example. When we applied the Aina Aloha Economic Futures tool along with the SDG work, combined it, and then birthed a new child called the Malala Implementation Tool. I shared a little bit with Celeste, but you're hearing it more now. I was asked as a volunteer on Hawaii Island to work with this developer. We had adamantly opposed this particular developer for a lot of different reasons. And we said, here, let's find a way, a middle ground. And we want to invite you to use this tool to better assess how you might be able to reconfigure your land development proposal and your community benefits package to create the jobs, to create the housing, to better address the environmental and cultural concerns that the community had. Lo and behold, they scored themselves with our tool, Malala Implementation Tool. They scored so low, they retracted their proposal, and then they used the tool. We supported them to apply the tool with some of their additional objectives that they had in alignment with our work. They reproposed it. They did not face the same level of community pushback, and it passed. And the community won because I think they doubled the amount of affordable housing that was then available. They increased all of the community benefits that community was really advocating for. So that is a concrete example of how this collaboration, this collective work that is mission-led and mission-driven and values-driven, but also what's really important, if there's anything I invite you to take away from this, is that to have the tools to be able to enact the change that we want and aspire towards is critical. It's critical for us as community members. It's critical for us as policymakers or advocates. It's critical for us as funders of change.
Thanks for the future that you're building, quite literally with tools that you're creating to share with not just us, but for others to use in their place of context as well. And also what that means for the future that you were creating through Aina Aloha Economic Futures, and then also through this commitment to regeneration, beyond this commitment to sustainability, but what that means in a circular sort of way for.
And I need to shout out again to Maui County. Thank you so much to Mayor Bisson and Cynthia and everyone at various departments. So I got to, I'm a small business owner. And one of the things that I do is I get to participate in some contentious conversations. Anyways, long story short, my Economic Recovery Commission was formed, and we worked very closely with Mayor Bison's leadership, and through that process, the community, we were able to use the Malama implementation tool for the community to score and assess that the projects that they wanted that would go into the long-term recovery plan that would get funded post Lahaina fire. So again, another example of how community and our government leadership comes together for the benefit of all.
Bonnie, you've been an incredible leader in our community. Part of Kaʻāmauloa Economic Futures and building the future that we want for Hawaii. You also have a background in regenerative tourism, an expansive systems thinker and builder, not dissimilar from all of the other panelists as well. And of course, you're new to this role, but how are you thinking both in this role as CEO of HCG, but also as just a bridge builder in your own right of contributing to building a future that we want to see and culture sustainability in Hawaii?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a couple of things. I want to first say to the youth, you folks are the dream realized. For my parents and grandparents, they fought hard during the Hawaiian Renaissance in the 70s to imagine a world where these youth did exactly what they just did. And so it's a proud moment, I think, for many of us to see the decades of work and struggle and commitment and perseverance be realized today. So mahalo to you all. And mahalo to the village that supports each of them, because it takes a village to raise each of us. I think about my kupuna, I think about my mom in particular, who really kind of, I think, instilled in me a work ethic and some values that continue to guide my leadership today. Sammy mentioned systems change. I think that is a theme for me in a lot of the work that I do. I also think of myself in a lot of ways as a disruptor in a positive way, because sometimes systems work exactly how they're designed, but perhaps the outcomes that they were designed for were built in a different time and for a different purpose. And so how do we adjust and how do we adapt and hybridize these ideas and keep what works and keeps what's best and important for us, but then also moving forward. And so I think that adaptive and sort of systems thinking is what underpins a lot of my work. I came recently from government, as I mentioned, and so perhaps a tangible example for me more recent, actually, pause. We're gonna have an ADD moment. In the photos and in a lot of the video that the youth were in, they were at a place that, if I'm not mistaken, is known as Kaʻāmauloa. Is that where that was? Now let's rewind Ke'ea, Ampua. If we rewind probably about 15 years, I was working with Kanipo Kea Schultz in helping to stand that up. And the first lo'i that we opened was a very small triangle. And so what I now see in the photos and the video behind these youth is the dream also realized. I also want to shout out Mahina and her work with setting up Kaʻāmauloa, which is just Makai, or just oceanward of the land where those lo'i are. And so again, this is again circular and connected and all those things. Tangible example. At the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we really wanted to understand tourism in a different way. We understood that it provided $20 billion in revenue. We understood that it was a quarter of the state's workforce, 217,000 jobs, and the enormous economic engine that it is for Hawaii. We also understood the altruistic version of tourism to bring people together, and that people who can understand one another and connect with one another are less likely to fight with one another, and all the things and challenges that we have. And so tourism as a bridge to bring people together and learning, I think, was a really important part of our work and informed how we thought about it. What we realized also is that sometimes government can get in the way. Sometimes government should empower. And so we really undertook this community listening process called destination management. And we really moved all of the decision-making back down to the local level and a regional level. And we said, how do these destination management action plans become tangible, real priorities for those communities about where they want to see tourism, where they don't want to see tourism, what they want to see, what they don't want to see, how they want to be portrayed, what stories they want told, how they want the story being told. Again, our marketing is a huge megaphone for how we communicate. And so tourism did all of that. And so we really moved all of that back to community. And so we had a Maui Nui DMAP, we had a Hawaii Island DMAP, we had an Oahu DMAP, we had a Kauai DMAP, and each of them are these 4 counties. And so I want to also thank Mayor for his partnership and his administration support for the communities that really, I think, came together. On Maui in particular, the road to Hana, many people have heard about it. Many people want to take that drive. Community was like, nah, we're not about that. Our ambulances cannot get in and out. We get traffic. You guys stopping in the middle of the road, blocking the road, taking photos. You guys making any kind, jumping off the bridges. And community said, we want to actually be engaged. And so we worked with them, provided over $100,000 in capacity building dollars for them. 3 nonprofits then took on the responsibility to steward their own places. And that initiative became known as Malama Maui Hikina. And so they then now interface with visitors directly, they storytell, they employ people from that area. And it really became an example where you had like 100% opposed to tourism, flip all the way around. And you have folks like, I think I'm struggling with Hana Highway Initiative. Is that what they were called? Yeah, Hana Highway Initiative, right? Being some of the most vocal anti-tourism voices, now being some of the strongest. And we see leaders like Napuhueo and others who've come into their own and understood and really challenged their own hard-held beliefs about what tourism was and the impact it was having and shifted it. So I think for me, Sam, that's a tangible example that when we come together, we create an umeke, this container of trust to have difficult conversations, recognize community-based planning tools like the Malama implementation tool and what we were trying to do at AAEF really can have really impactful outcomes when we were committed to them.
So much, Kalani and all. My next question for the above 18 crowd on the panel, I won't go farther than that in each distinction, but would be this, as you can maybe tell, the three on the floor right, are to demonstrate, well, of course, their incredible multi-sectoral experience, but the fact that the public-private partnership is a multi-sectoral group network of experience, right? We have a political leader, we've got Makena, who's been a small business owner, but also expands, her work into so many different sectors, and same with Kalani as well, and has worked across all sectors essentially, and to demonstrate how wide that breadth really is of the network, and to showcase also that the network is all about collaboration, which is we love partnerships. That's our favorite word in Hawaii Green Growth. But I think we can all experience in this room one connecting factor is that in order to achieve the SDGs or whatever goals we're working towards, it's going to be a collaborative effort, right? So I'd like to ask you 3 in particular, like where you see those nexus points. And Connie, you were just kind of speaking to that about the work that you're doing with HTA. But moving forward, and maybe in the near term, we've heard the presentation for the VLR, but we know that our goals are not necessarily on track for Hawaii for our sustainability goals. But are there tangible next steps that you can take, call to action, perhaps for the folks in the room, maybe a call to action for yourselves and your roles, and what you're going to do as next steps for how we're going to get there, knowing that we've all made this commitment to 2030 for the Aloha Plus Challenge as well as for the SDGs. Where collaboration comes in on that, because nobody can do it alone, right? So one of you 3, if you want to take it, I'll hand the mic to the brave soul.
Okay. I don't know where I want to start. I think I want to highlight a few other things. And I'm going to go a little bit off script from Sam's question, but I think it's important in the sense that when we come together, right? No task is too large when done together. It's a Hawaiian proverb. I think about, again, relationships and how important they are. And I think about how each of us, okay, in Hawaii, food. We organize around food all the time. And so food becomes a really centering thing for us. And so when you show up to someone's home, you never show up empty-handed. When you come to the potluck, you bring in something. And so I think in this work of collaboration, each of us has to identify within ourselves what we can bring to the table. And that we show up with it when we're called to. And sometimes that responsibility, we use the word kuleana for responsibility. It means 2 things in my mind. It's our burden and our joy. And so when we are called to kuleana, sometimes we have the choice to take the agency to show up and to bring our talent, time, and experience. And sometimes that work calls us. And sometimes we don't have a choice, but yet we're called to serve. And so I think the call to action is, how do we find our gifts and our talents and our time and our experience that we want to bring to the luau or to the ahaina or to whatever it is, to the potluck. And then when we show up, when we're called, and sometimes when we're forced. Yeah.
Two thoughts. One is, actually, I think we've had some really positive wins in terms of the policies that have been passed, whether at the county level with affordable housing, and so forth. Bill 9, been checking that. Mahalo. And then at the state level, this past legislature, we passed a biosecurity plan and money towards that. We were also our governor signed into law a Care for Aina Now, which is additional dollars from our tourism tax that's going to be funneled into communities and into government to better care and steward Hawaii. Here's the thing. Here is my big wonder. I think at the ground level, we're building our capacity to gather and to articulate those shared priorities. I think we have a lot of good energy there. At the policy level and at the business leadership level and at those levels, I think we're also seeing some wins that we just spoke to. Where I believe where we need to do a lot more is the administration of change. We're making change. We're seeing change at the policy direction. We're getting some greater support with funding as well. But it's the middle section, all those important people who do the administration of change is where I think a lot of the bottlenecks in place. I'm not sure how to figure that out. So I'm seeing it as a recurring bottleneck, whether it be in the nonprofit sector, whether it be in the public sector, whether it be in education and healthcare and so forth and so forth and so forth. So I'm wondering, how do we optimize and improve upon the systems that's needed to effectuate the idea, the good intentions that these new laws have been passed, and then make sure that monies get to where they need to get to, that there are economic measures in place to make sure that these monies are not rated for other purposes, that there's appropriate staffing, right, and that the culture of change will continue to foster trust and mutual cooperation. The last point that I will say is, I think, spaces like this, and I come from one of my businesses is I create Indigenous innovation hubs, co-work space and event space. And what that work has taught me over the past 8 years is that we need these kinds of generative places and spaces. Why? It's because we want to connect. We want to have meaningful and purposeful lives. And we want to connect. Yeah, we want to bring the best of our contributions. And so last point is, if you want to, it's this adage, if that anything that's worthwhile is going to take time. It's going to take time. So I just leave you with this nonprofit that I helped to co-found 25 years ago. We had the opportunity to care for 800-year-old traditional aquacultural setting on the island of Oahu. In the 60s, its fish pond wall was blown out. It's essentially an important food source. It was no longer working. It was dilapidated. And so when our nonprofit came together as volunteers to start to restore the relationship between land, people, and place, we could have got federal grants to, and this complete the restoration of that 1.3 mile long within 2-3 years. And we were deliberate about not choosing that, because we felt like if we were to just come in and then contract out the restoration of this important place. 1.3 miles of an ancient wall that our ancestors had left for us. We would have lost 25 years of remembering how to come together, how to relearn to depend on one another, how to bring our sweat equity to not only envision, but to speak, like physically feel and create the futures that we want. A future that is regenerative, a future that is a focus on collective responsibility. So sometimes the work, as much as we want it to go fast, we have to have the discipline to take the time so that everyone can remember how we do it together.
I think my short answer is for us to build up more youth programs, which is what we've tried to do at Maui. We have a couple of different youth programs, trying to involve them from even middle school, beyond school. Is one of our youth hubs that come over and help us with planting in front of our Kaʻāmauloa Maui, our county building. So I think more of that. We see proof all the time of how good the youth are at telling us how they want their place to look, instead of us telling them how we want their place to look. And so that input is significant. And so I think us fostering more of that would be the plan. You know, I'm listening to Makena and it reminds me of this saying, you don't give credit to the person who predicts the floods, you give credit to the person who builds the ark. And so these are ark builders. These are ark builders. We can talk about it, but they want to get right to implementation. You can hear it in their words, in their voices, in their video. They want to get right to building arks and getting implementation. Not talk already, as they say in Hawaii. Too much talking, not enough doing. So I think for us to continue to, and I'm not saying this because they're sitting here now, but I'm glad they're here. As I said at the beginning, they're the proof of what we need to do. And so I think from our perspective, adding programs in that will continue to get youth, I'm sure they are the best promoters of other youth coming on. When you see them, they're like, I want to be like them. That's what I want to be. And so I think for whatever we can do on our end, and again, we do try to have more youth groups come to our county, but perhaps throughout the state, and then eventually where we want it to go. That would be my suggestion.
Mayor, that actually tees up my last question for this group for our young people. And thank you, Mayor, for framing it that way of our ark builders. What do we need from our community, from our village, from the adults in the room to build the ark? So what is our call to action for those that have come before us, recognizing that collaboration, right, is a thread of connection. And Kaʻāmauloa, also you might want to share what that means, and why that was the name chosen for your class. You might have to call him the parish of BB, but tying all of that together, what do we need to continue this work to bring more young people into the fold, recognizing that's also part of your mission as well. So how are we continuing this work moving forward?
I'll start with the meaning of Kaʻāmauloa, which means the thread that never stops, and it connects our three people, our past, future, and present, into one never-ending thread, and that understanding this interconnectedness can help us enact change. And so we are really trying to build this pathway and get other youth involved, which has kind of been a struggle because there's some funding issues, some like resource issues over there, because we know youth have the ideas and experience, and we know our history of how exactly we came from. Our culture has persisted throughout challenges, and like Hawaii used to be on a global stage, but we really need in Hawaii, as we all talked about, there's a lot of community ties that allow young people to share our ideas and start small initiatives and organizations and have their ideas heard. But not so much implementation. Like you said, we are eager to start implementing our work, but we need the support, resources, and more of the know-how that the adults have to put these things into business, politics, that are usually closed off to young people like us, but we're really trying to get there. So we need the funding support from you guys. So thank you for listening to us.
I just want to talk a little bit about that funding thing. Some of our colleagues just recently, earlier this summer, went to France to speak at the UN Oceans Conference. And they were able to do that through a grant provided. And it is resources like that that are sometimes hard to come by, but are the most valuable when it comes to sharing what we have to share with more people, making sure that what we have to say reaches everyone, reaches the audience that we need it to. And so, like you were saying, like everyone here has said, like it's the resources, and like you're saying, it's the support, like emotionally, making sure that we feel empowered to in the spaces that are given to us, making sure that there are more spaces given to us, but also physical, like monetary, like contributions.
So one thing that we noticed was that there's a lot of youth efforts within Hawaii, but no one really knows what they're doing. So us as the SDG Youth Council don't know what groups on Maui are doing or Big Island. And so we tried and we're still trying to create a youth network within Hawaii where we can communicate with each other, collaborate with each other, and kind of be on the same page about our efforts, sustainability, and generative ideas. But also we are looking to become involved within the local 2030 Island Network with Guam Green Growth, their youth version, and as well as the other green growth hubs. But I'll leave with this. Last time we were here in New York presenting a VLR, we were 13 and 14. Now we're 15 and 16. The next time we come, we'll be adults, we'll be 18. So this is really our last moment to kind of be like youth in our eyes. To be here, share ideas before I pass it on to our colleagues in the back who now take the torch and they pass it down. And that's the hope, is we keep on passing this torch of action.
Thank you all so much. We thank you for being here today, for being with us. We thank incredible JP in the back of this wonderful space for hosting us with generosity. Encourage you to speak to him. What a great space for these events. And of course, have a few more minutes in here for coffee and pastries to talk story with our wonderful young leaders here to follow up on their needs to build the arc for all of the initiatives that are happening with our local leaders here. And continuing the circles of remembrance. These are our future ancestors that will be passing down their legacies of knowledge within their communities, within their schools, and are doing that quite actively right now. I think because of the time, we're not going to take panel questions, but please catch these folks back here, as well as myself and Helene and Jill with Hawaii Green Growth for any questions that you've got. We've got the space for a couple more minutes and invite you to chat with all of us. We've got a couple more events this week too, so come and find us and let us know what they are, or this week, excuse me. And thank you again so much for being here. We so appreciate you all as part of our community.